Alright, so you're a rapper, comedian, actor, screenwriter, radio presenter, voiceover artist. You're also Jamaican and English and a boy from Kilburn.
Yes.
So tell me a bit about how you grew up and when you came to realise what your identity is and how you reacted to that realisation.
Wow. Well, first of all, that intro makes me sound like I'm just trying it. Like, I'm just trying to grab for anything that I can do. It's quite mad when I hear that list because it's a progression. It's just you get involved in one thing and it sort of leads to another thing. It's not like I've gone, I'm this and I'm that and I'm this and I'm that. It's been quite natural. But yes, I am from Kilburn, right from where we're sat now. And I am half Jamaican, half English. All of those things that I think have combined to create probably my voice and my character in different ways. I think if you chat to a lot of mixed race people in the UK, whatever their mix is, they start from a very young age walking a tightrope between two different cultures. Literally whatever their mix is, as long as it's two completely different cultures, they'll walk that tightrope between the two, and they'll learn a process of being socially chameleonic, basically, able to switch between the two with relative ease as a kind of survival technique, a way to combat what is initially a bit of an identity crisis. Because if you're mixed, especially if it's between two cultures where the skin tones are very different, the first thing you'll notice is that you don't look like either of your parents. You'll notice that at a very young age, and that throws you into a spiral of thinking where you're not sure where you belong. So that starts very, very early for mixed race people. So, like I say, then you develop these chameleonic skills, and how better as an adult to put those skills to use than within a business like mine, where you need to meet different people every day and win them over, essentially, or present to them in a certain way or keep them entertained. All that stuff is not something I learnt in the job, it's something I learnt when I was a little kid.
Right, exactly.
So I think the last part of that question was how I reacted to that realization of who I was. I would say initially it was negative, then it became like a weapon. It became like a huge advantage in the way that I communicated with strangers. So, in my mind, I don't think it's a coincidence that Drake is mixed race. I don't think it's a coincidence that Bob Marley was mixed race. I don't think it's a coincidence that Obama, Jimi Hendrix was mixed race, because what they were able to do was straddle two worlds, probably in their personal life. I couldn't say for sure, but I reckon almost 100% guaranteed they were able to do that in their personal life, and 100% definitely in their professional life. They're able to straddle two worlds quite comfortably, and that comes from their childhoods, not from something they learned on the job. Yeah,
exactly. So just going off that, how do you feel like your class background and your racial and ethnic background interact with one another? Do you feel like, especially in your professional career, that one has an advantage over the other, or do you ever feel like you're more in touch with one than the other?
Yeah, you know what, it's a constant sort of inner battle and inner struggle, and it's an excellent question as well. I would say for black people in the UK, there's always a class issue, because for black people it doesn't matter how what world you're in, how high a class world you're in, what the upper echelons are. There will always be an assumption that you're not middle class or you're not upper class, and there's no way of knowing it without speaking to you or seeing what you're about. Black people will always have that, because there's this assumption, well, how could you be, and black people are trying to combat that every day. I say for me, I come from a working class background on both sides of my family. So my mum was an immigrant from Jamaica when she was like 14, 15. A very poor background. My dad was from southeast London. again, very poor background, was conscripted into the war, became a soldier in the Second World War. He was a lot older than my mum. So my parents' stories are classic, traditional working class stories from a white English point of view and a Caribbean immigrant point of view. And I was born into that. But I'm very much the product of two working class people who wanted something different for their kid. So even though we had no money, my mum and dad were absolutely adamant that I'd be able to access the things that other kids in my class at school were doing. So not that I went to a posh school, I mean it was just a state school around here, but if the kids were going to an after school club, or if there was a trip somewhere, or whatever it was, no matter how small, they were like, you're doing it. I don't care, you're doing it, you know. And that approach always made me and my sister before me and my brother after me feel like we were on a par, you know. So I had no idea we were poor. I had no concept of that at all. I just thought I was the same as all the other kids. And I thought I was the same as the white kids. I thought I was the same as the black kids. So I had no concept of race or class really at the primary level until I got to secondary school. And I went to a secondary school in Cricklewood that had no uniform, which was a bitch for me because my mum wasn't going to buy me any of the garms that some of the other kids had. So straight away it was a stick to beat me with, you know, the fact I was wearing high-techs and non-branded clothes and stuff like that. And I found it very frustrating. However, already by that stage, you know, I'd started to understand the class system. I started to see it around me, and I definitely considered, as I do now, that I'd become middle class, you know, without the money. Now I consider myself middle class with the money. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Even though I sound like I sound and I'm from where I'm from, because working class people don't do what I do at my age. If you're working class and you're my age, you don't do what I do. You don't work in show business. You don't write for the advertising industry. You don't appear on Radio 1 or across the TV channels. It's just not something we do. So it's a really weird one. I consider myself a working class kid who's become middle class, but I also drop right back down as soon as I'm in the industry that I'm in.
So coming from a working class background and being a racial and ethnic minority and perhaps having both of those backgrounds collide, or definitely having those backgrounds collide, you can feel like you have to amplify or diminish your natural self to feel comfortable or to be accepted in certain arenas. At the beginning of your professional career, were there times, or not even your educational career, were there times where you felt like you had to code switch or augment or diminish your natural self? And how was that dependent on the many different mediums that you work in, so comedy and acting and music? How did that come about, and when was that period where you felt like, I'm not doing this anymore?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, in terms of my youth, like before any kind of professionalism, I definitely felt awkward about standing out. I didn't like it whenever I was faced with it. Even if, like, I remember when I made my first sort of group of like other mixed race friends that were boys, and I was the only one who wasn't half Irish. That's what you get when you come from Kilburn, you know. Even that made me feel awkward. So it took me a long time to shake those things, but I think probably the first time was within battling. When I was a teenager, when I was rapping, and I get into the freestyle battles and stuff like that, you know, people would cuss you about anything. So I was always getting cussed about being mixed race, and bouncing back against that was probably the first sort of cathartic moment that I had. In sort of owning who I thought I was. And similarly, I was never a road guy, you know. I was a geeky kind of kid, so that was another thing that I would get gunned for in the battle scene. It's so ironic to me to think back to those days and think I was gunned, I was teased or cussed on the battle scene for being too posh. Do you know what I mean? And then getting into the mainstream entertainment industry, 7-8 years later, it's crazy to me that all of a sudden I'm like the rough around the edges guy. Like I'm like, oh yeah, don't cross that guy because he's gonna switch. So none of that was lost on me. But I think the first time I sort of hardened myself against prejudice was probably in the battles, and then when I got into stand-up, it was such an intense atmosphere, such a stressful, like emotionally challenging job from the start to get up there and be funny, that I sort of took all the resentment and all the anger and all the passion that I had from those battle days and pushed it into stand-up so that people just wouldn't fuck with me, and it really worked. And then the beauty of stand-up was that I was able to explore these topics within what I was talking about, which I didn't necessarily feel like I had the freedom to do within rap. I just didn't think people cared. So I think a big day for me was probably, it was back around, I don't know, maybe 2012, maybe 2012, 2013, and I was getting bored of the material that I was writing for stand-up. I went home and I just wrote about what I was interested in. I didn't bother with any jokes. I just wrote down everything I was interested in. Ended up writing about 5 pages in Word about race and class and how I saw myself. I just wrote it out. And then on stage, I just worked out where the funny bits were. And that day then, that's when I thought, I'm a different class of comic now. Like I'm on a different level. Because now I'm talking about what I really want to talk about. I've not written jokes. I've written what I want to talk about, and I've found the funny in it. And everything changed from that point, really. I thought this is an opportunity to do something that means something. And it totally changed the direction of my career, because I watched my peers that I came up with in stand-up go on to do all the things that I was offered to do that I turned down. So like, never mind the Buzzcocks and 8 out of 10 Cats and Have I Got News for You and all the panel shows. And then off the panel shows that you're able to sell tickets to do big venues, and you become like a mainstream comic. You become a celebrity essentially, and then you're on I'm a Celebrity or Strictly Come Dancing or whatever. And I just never wanted that. I just thought all of that will dilute what I want to say, So I've always just held back a little bit, made a lot less money, but been a lot more comfortable with who I am, So it's a constant challenge, but it's one that I'm always up for, because I like to surprise people. And I don't like people to know what they're gonna get from me, because like a lot of time I don't know what I'm gonna get from me. But I don't want to be like that guy who's just on everything. Oh yeah, that guy. He used to be funny, or he used to be interesting. Now he's just on everything. I don't want to be that guy. I'm more interested in what's bubbling away under the surface, who the new guys are coming up. I love show business, but from the start I wanted to do it on my terms.
So earlier you said that you feel like you've become middle class. So when you come back to Kilburn, have you ever felt out of place coming back, or are you completely out of comfort in where you are, like in your roots?
Yeah, I mean, I love it here, man. I've been in Hackney for 16 years, and I just sold my place, and I'm coming back to North Wheezy, and I can't wait. It's still so unpretentious. There's no pretentiousness. It just is what it is, and maybe it will never be like the hot spot in London, but I'm cool with that. All I want is access to the hot spot. I don't need to live in the hot spot, So, to be honest, when I come back here, like I'm an ambassador for the mayor's office of Brent. You know, I'm a patron of one of the libraries. I represent. I'm a patron at a homeless charity in Cricklewood, Ashford Place. I'm a patron at a refugee charity in Queen's Park called Salisbury World. Like, I feel like I've never left, and I know when I come back here, it's like it's family. You know, it feels like home. I would never feel like I've outgrown it. And similarly, I've never had that feeling to leave London. Like I feel like a custodian. I feel like I have to be here because every time I turn around, another area of London has just become something that I don't recognise, that leaves a slightly sour taste in my mouth. So yeah, I love this area, and I walk the streets here, and you'd see if I walk down Kilburn High Road on a Saturday afternoon, it would take me 4 hours to get from one end to the other because people stop me in the street and just give me so much love. Like, it's amazing. It's amazing. And I'm looking forward to coming back. Be like the prom queen coming home.
So, as we said before, you've achieved success in a variety of areas, in the performing arts especially. We know there's talent in the ends, but in the professional world, do you ever feel like, with agents specifically, that they're not willing to accept all of this talent for fear of oversaturating their books with the same kind of people?
I haven't come across an acting agent so far, for me, that seems in any way unwilling to take on minority talent or working class talent. I think they're excited by it. However, like I say, that's why I said let's get specific, because I think in casting there's still issues, I would say. Like, you know, I think in casting there's still a section that's got dinosaurs where they can't quite see how you could play this role. And I was talking with a very famous working class actor a few weeks ago. I won't say his name, but we agreed on one thing very, very strongly, which was that how come in TV and film in the UK, posh actors can play working class on screen, but we're not allowed to go up, like, as if we can't do the voice. Like, we're not allowed to play middle class or upper class characters. You know, we can't be on, you know, the Downtons and the period things. And I don't just mean in terms of ethnic minorities here. I mean working class actors. Like, we're not trusted to do that, even though we're actors. That's the job. Pretending to be somebody else, doing the voice, adopting the body language. But the other way is always fine. Yeah. And that's why it irritates me now almost as much as seeing like a white actor play an ethnic role. It irritates me almost as much as that to see a middle class or upper class actor doing the gore blimey governor in a kitchen sink drama. I just think you couldn't have found an actor who's actually from there to do that, really, you know. And if you are gonna let them play that, then let us play them. Yeah. You know.
Do you think this is a British issue?
Yeah, I think it is. I think casting in America is a little more open-minded. And I'm sure there's some American actors that will watch this that will be screaming at the screen and disagreeing with me. But, you know, I know a lot of black actors, black British actors who've gone out there and walked into roles that they probably wouldn't have walked into the equivalent of in a British drama, you know. And that says to me that, okay, they're thinking about this stuff, you know. I was watching there's a writer called David Simon who created The Wire, the huge show in the States on HBO. But when I was a kid, he had a show called Homicide, and I was watching it again recently. It used to be on Channel 4 in the early 90s. This show started in like 89, 90, you know. I was watching it again recently, and like more than half the cast are black. There's even a mixed race policeman, as half white, half black. He's not Latino, he's half black, half white. And I'm like, this is like 89, 90. And the creator's white, producers are white, you know. So I think America, like, they sort of clocked that a while ago. For a while in the 60s, 70s, they were making black shows, and then everything else was white. But something changed towards the end of the 80s, and they got on it. Whereas I think we're still like at that stage where we're just starting now. You see shows now where it's like, there's a couple black actors. And it feels a little bit token. But I think we're heading in the right direction, I do. Because I think you're starting to see more and more dramas now that are fronted by women, stories that are about women. You're seeing more stories about ethnic minorities. Not enough, but more. And we also have to remember the makeup of this country. You know, we're Londoners, so we think, well, come on, man, like, we're underrepresented. But if you look at the makeup of the UK, ultimately, it's still like 85% white. So it's fair enough that there's a lot of white people represented on television. It is fair enough. But it's an industry that is disturbingly white behind the camera. So that needs addressing as well, because I don't think you can tell black stories, I don't think you can tell working class stories, I don't think you can tell LGBT stories when everyone behind the camera is 45 and up and white and male and posh. Do you know what I mean? It's going to be hard to tell those stories in a convincing way. I find it hard enough just writing a female character, just because I'm a man. So I think about like the fact that everybody I meet behind the camera is white and old and male and posh. And I think, how the fuck are you writing stories, convincing stories about these diverse characters? You can't, unless you're doing a lot of research. I mean, intense research, and I don't think they are.
So thinking about these power structures, can you ever truly transcend class in the UK?
It's so funny because you go to other countries and they just don't know what you're talking about. Like, if me and you went to like Atlanta, for example, which is like a huge black population in the South in America, they just think we were like Harry Potter or Downton Abbey. You know, they would just think we're super posh. So they don't really see, in the same way that we probably wouldn't be able to recognise the huge difference in accents between people in the north of Japan and the south of Japan, which is like, you just sound Japanese to me, you know. So it's understandable. But here, we're acutely aware. So if we see a boy walking down the street and he's wearing jeans underneath his tracksuit bottoms, and he's got one hand on his balls and the other hand is like single-handedly rolling a spliff, and he's got his phone under his chin and he's shouting obscenities into there, we're making an assumption about the class of this dude immediately, no matter what colour he is, you know. And if he sounds the way he sounds, could I bring him to the BAFTAs and get him to meet, I don't know, Simon Callow or Russell T Davies or something like that, and would they recoil slightly at his demeanour? I think they probably would. And that is the UK. We've got this thing in our heads of these three different teams: the working classes, the middle classes, and the upper class toffs. You know, and you know, we feel like even now that when we have partnerships, when we choose lovers, partners, my boyfriend's from a slightly, he's from a slightly edgier background than me. My wife's like super posh, blah blah blah. Do you know what I mean? We've still got it even now because it's so ingrained in our culture. You know, that's the culture we come from. we come from a culture that had kings and queens and fucking peasants. You know what I mean? We created the class structure to support the lords and ladies and royalty in the Georgian era. And that class structure has stayed ever since. And the poor will always be held down. And the rich will always be a minority that we very, very rarely meet. And the rest will be middle classes. And that's the reason I count myself as middle class, because middle class people in the UK now, a lot of them are still living like hand to mouth, even though they're earning really well.
Yeah.
There might be a couple who have both got full-time jobs, bringing in like 40 grand a year each. But the cost of living so high, and they got 3 kids. They're just earning money and spending it. They both got jobs, so they got to pay for childcare for 2 of the kids. The older one's at school, but he's going on school trips. They got to pay for that. The mortgage is through the roof. Do you know what I mean? So they're middle class, no question. Do you know what I mean? They watch Gardener's World and they eat sourdough bread and stuff like that. But they're not wealthy.
Yeah.
Like we understand wealthy. They're not like minted.
Yeah.
They're surviving, but they're not working class.
Yeah.
Because the working class survival is different even to that.
Yeah.
You've got guys that are like scrambling to get like 40, 50 pounds to keep the electric on. They're just trying to scramble that cash together to get the electric on. Whereas that middle class family, even though they haven't got any spare money, they're doing the same holiday every year to their friend's house, so they don't have to pay for accommodation. It's different. It's different to that guy who's scrambling for cash just to keep the lights on.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And then neither of those two are like the guys who are like, they've got 2 houses in London, 1 in Dubai, 1 in New York. Do you know what I mean? They're flying private, or business or upper or first class. You know, there's wealth in this city that you would not believe. Like it will make your eyes water. And I've come across it once or twice, and it's just, it almost makes you want to vomit.
Yeah.
Because it's such a small group, and everyone else is just grafting.
Yeah.
You know. So can you transcend between those 3? I think it's not impossible, but I think either you or someone around you will always feel that you're an imposter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I feel I'm an imposter to this day. You know? Like I do the most middle class things ever, and I still don't feel like I belong.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
No matter what I do, I always feel like at some stage I'm going to get thrown out of here.
Yeah.
You know, I hosted the BAFTAs in LA in 2016, and I'm there in Beverly Hills. My front rows like Jennifer Lawrence, Samuel L. Jackson, Jake Gyllenhaal, Jodie Foster, you know. And I'm doing my thing, hosting the event. Tom Hanks is there, like I'm getting last. Tom Hanks giving me a hug and shit on stage. And all the way through, in the back of my mind was going, someone's gonna kick you out of here in a minute. You know? Yeah. Even then I was like, nah, this is it's not fully real. So I think you can step in and out if you're wily and if you have the skills, and especially if you've got the chameleon quality that we talked about at the beginning of this interview. But I think in your heart of hearts, you'll always struggle to feel 100% comfortable. And even if you do, someone else will pick you out and go, no.
Yeah.
And I honestly, all I can think is that is generations and generations of living in these kind of separate nodules that we have in the UK. That's all I can think it is.
Yeah.
That brings about that mentality.
Yeah.
And as long as that's there, certain people are going to be held back, certain people are going to really flourish, but also certain people, myself I count in this last category, will be able to take advantage of it and surprise people.
Yeah.
Because I'm still in worlds every day where people don't expect me to be as articulate as I am. but they don't expect me to clock certain shit that they're doing, you know? They don't expect me to clock certain mathematics or the money. They don't expect me to understand certain elements of the industry. I clock a lot of shit because I've experienced a lot of shit. I've experienced the boardrooms and I've experienced the streets. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not an expert either, but it takes a lot to pull the wool over my eyes. So, you know, I think a perfect example of this is when I first got into stand-up, I was, you know, I'd get paid like maybe 20, 30, 40, or on a good day, 50 quid to do a stand-up gig, like 20 minutes. And sometimes I'd have to travel to like Liverpool, do the gig. It cost me £100 to stay in a hotel, £60 to drive there and back, and I get 50 quid to do the gig. It was really hard that first year. Then I started getting in with other booking agents and started getting in with some of the bigger agents. And I was with one big company, one of the biggest in the UK for stand-up comedy. I won't say what they're called. But I was getting paid now £130 a gig, right? So I'm about 10 months into stand-up. I'm getting £130 a gig, and I'm like, okay, cool. And I'm watching my profit margins now. Like, I'm being really careful, picking the right areas to go to, making sure I can make enough money because I just had a baby girl, my first daughter. So I'm like, okay, money's really important. And then this company, like I say, are one of the biggest bookers in the UK, are paying me late. Like, I invoice them, I put on the invoice, 10 working days, please, you know, and my bank details, and the money's not coming. And I would be in the green rooms at gigs, backstage in the dressing rooms, and there'd be these other comics talking about this particular booking agent, and they'd say, oh yeah, they always pay late, it's crazy. I've got money owed to me from like 9 months ago, and they'd be laughing about it. And I'd be like, what the fuck are you laughing about? I'm like, these guys need to give me my fucking money. I remember I had that conversation with them, and immediately the next day I called them up and like, hey, how's it going? And I was like, yeah, I sent like 3 invoices and I haven't been paid. And they're like, what? I was like, yeah, I sent 3 invoices. They all said 10 working days. Like the earliest one's like 6-7 weeks ago. And they're like, oh right. I was like, yeah, right. So what's happening? And they're like, oh, we'll send the check out today. And they did. They sent it out that day, and it came the next day. And then from then on, I got paid on time. But I was still in green rooms years after that. The people going, oh yeah, it's such a joke, man. I joke about it on stage sometimes. They pay so late. And like, the difference between me and you is that you came into this supported by your mum and dad, and it was like a dream. They knew it was a dream, so they said, hey, you can come and stay at our house while you're trying to be a stand-up comedian. And oh, isn't it lovely that Eric's a stand-up comedian now, you know. Whereas I was living in a bedsit, my girl was pregnant, I was working at a charity in South Kilburn, I had no money at all, and I was shit scared about having a kid. So when I got into stand-up, I was like, this shit has to work, and it has to work soon. So I was so serious about my money. The upshot of that was I stopped even getting asked about the shit money gigs, because the bookers were having conversations amongst themselves going, you know what, don't even offer that to Doc because he's not going to take it. He's not going to go for that. Do you know what I mean? Oh, and also, is that for Doc Brown? Yeah, get it sent out, because he's going to kick off a stick. I thought, you know what, if they want to think of me as that Aggie guy who's going to come in and like take it to the roads, which obviously I'm not, let them think that, because it's working for me right now, you know? They just weren't used to having a working class guy who was about his dough.
Yeah.
And actually it worked beautifully to my advantage.
Yeah.
And it has done ever since.
working class kids who go to state schools, we're told the ingredient to success is to pull up your pants, wear a suit, talk properly. Should code switching be encouraged?
I think it's as and when. I think I would never tell someone to take the thing that makes them feel most comfortable away from their personality. But I remember early on in my career, I got asked to defend slang usage.
Okay.
And what really angered me about the person I was arguing against, this was on like Channel 4 News, was that they were saying you can't go into a job interview talk about, yeah bruv, like man's like rare. And I was like, see, the thing that irritates me about that statement is that you assume that we're dumb enough to use that language in that arena. We use slang amongst the people we understand us. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Just because we use slang, it doesn't mean we're dumb. Mm-hmm. We know, like, everybody's got their voice that they use with their friend's mum, you know, mm-hmm. or their friend's nan. They've got their polite voice, mm-hmm. and they will utilize that as and when. So I would say code switching makes it sound like almost like a violation of your roots and who you are. Mm. But actually there's a time and a place, you know, and I think if you're smart, you're yourself 97% of the time, and then there's a moment where it's like, you know what, let me just stick the T's and the H's back on just for now. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because it looks like this fed's gonna shift me, and like it would be smarter for me to just be that guy who shows up, you know. So I think there's a time and a place. I think ultimately, if you're gonna code switch in every situation, you're not gonna give the best of yourself because you're not gonna feel like yourself, you know. And people will go, oh yeah, he's a nice guy, but he didn't really have an edge to him. He didn't really stand out. And as soon as you code switch in every situation, what are you? Who are you? You know, I can't see how you're going to stand out if you're adopting a personality that isn't yours. So, yeah, I'd say it's as and when.
Right. So, last question: if you could give your young self any advice on how to navigate new spaces that are definitely British, but maybe not spaces that you're comfortable with, what would it be?
So if I could give my young self advice on how to deal with a new space within British culture that I'm not comfortable with? Wow, okay, that's that's a tough one. Well, it's really weird. There was a moment I had when I was battling, because I wear glasses, you know, I'm wearing contacts right now, but I wear glasses when I'm not wearing contacts, and I have done since I was about 15. So when I started battling when I was about 17, I was always wearing my glasses. I didn't have contacts in those days. And that would be the first thing that everyone took the piss out of. So there was a night, the first time I knocked someone out in a battle round. I talked about my glasses before he did, because I knew he was going to do it. And I remember when I watched 8 Mile, like Eminem adopted the same thing in the final scene. He disses himself before the guy can diss him, and then when it comes to the guy's turn, he just chokes. He's got nothing left to say because Eminem's done it to himself. And I love that scene because it reminded me of that battle where I cussed my own glasses and the dude was kind of lost for an opening diss, you know? Self-awareness, listening, humility, and then find a way to love yourself. Find a way to love yourself, because if you love yourself, if you've got time for yourself, and even though you know you're not as attractive as this person, you're not as talented as that person, you don't have necessarily the skill set of this other person, you still love yourself. People will love you, you know. and most importantly, the people you care about will love you. And then if you're getting into a business like mine, where you do kind of need people to love you in a different way, they probably will, you know, because you're lovable. So that's what I tell my younger self, because I didn't feel that way when I was younger. You know. It's taken me a long time to have love for myself. Yeah, I think that's what I'd say, man.